Welcome to this short workshop on delivering key worker driver training in the context of the COVID-19 outbreak. This short course has been designed to provide ADIs with advice and guidance when training key workers, so they are able to deliver essential driver training in a safer manner. You have to be an approved driving instructor and have a valid ADI certificate to be able to deliver key worker training. The course will cover what to do before the lesson, what to do during the lesson, personal protective equipment overview, terms and conditions, and what to do after the lesson. But first, let's have a look at the question about whether we should be delivering driver training at this time. As driver training makes it difficult to maintain social distancing, in general, the practice is discouraged at this time. You should not be training your normal pupils, only those pupils who have an essential need to develop their driving. However, to ensure key workers who need to acquire new licences or develop their occupational driving ability are safe and competent, we must ensure they receive adequate training, and that may include some in-vehicle training. We don't want to inadvertently cause another public health risk of having inadequately trained and prepared candidates taking tests and receiving licences, or drivers increasing their occupational driving role without the training to do so and mitigate their risks. There may be a variety of reasons for driver training at the time, which could include new licence acquisition, i.e. new licences in new categories to drive different classes of vehicle, or occupational driver training, developing the skills of the individual so they are able to drive or ride safely in the context of their working role. Not all training currently is about acquiring a new licence. Training may be required to enable workers to drive different vehicles within the same licence category, an example of this being delivery vehicles for online grocery. It is important that you validate that the pupils who approach you for driver training at this time are actually key workers with an essential need for driver training. You should not be delivering driving training at this time unless you have validated that the task is essential and the pupil is a key worker. Forms of validation can include a critical worker practical test confirmed with the DVSA, a letter from the key worker's employer confirming they are a key worker needing to drive or trained to drive for work, or if the key worker has a form of recognised ID, i.e. the NHS Staff Identification Badge. To join the key worker driver and rider training register, you will need to provide evidence in one of the forms above. Documentation can be sent as photos, uploads or scans. About critical worker tests. There are many key or critical workers doing an amazing job and helping to keep our country safe and running as normally as possible. But not all of these workers will be granted a critical worker test from the DVSA. A triage system is in place to assess which key workers need tests most urgently, and tests will be allocated on that need basis. As test slots, examiner availability and test centres are now limited, always check where the test has been booked and don't assume it will be at the usual times or locations. For the obvious reasons, you won't be invited to sit in on the test itself or be involved in the debrief. This is all designed to limit the amount of individuals involved in the process and mitigate the risk of COVID-19 being spread or contracted. The examiner may ask you to remove your headboard if you are taking the pupil to the test and they're using your vehicle, and will supply a pair of L plates if you don't have any. These L plates may be marked with NHS. We advise you don't use your headboard for training at this time and only use L plates to avoid any issues from members of the public. Obviously, if you're successful in gaining certification from the driver and rider training register at this time, you'll be able to display that certificate at all times, and that should be useful in heading off any queries and challenges about why you're training. Booking a critical worker test with DVSA. Pupils will need to ensure that they have a critical worker test booked with DVSA and provide evidence to you of this. They can book the test here. You're advised to check the time and location of any test booked, as times will not be the same. You must display your valid ADI licence as usual if you are taking the pupil to the test and supplying your car for the test. Here's some tips about what to do before the lesson itself. Before you even think about leaving to collect your pupil on the day to start the lesson, you should call them to check if they have any symptoms of coronavirus, such as a cough or high temperature. You can find out more about the symptoms of coronavirus and what to do on the NHS website. The link is below. If they know or have been in contact with anybody that is showing symptoms, they should also let you know, and you need to make decisions about whether you take that lesson. They or anyone they've been in contact with have travelled from a high-risk region is another flag to consider whether the lesson should take place. During the call, you should also request the pupil washes their hands thoroughly for at least 20 seconds, in line with government guidance, immediately before leaving the house, place of work, or wherever they're going before they come to meet you for the lesson. If they have clean, disposable protective gloves, they should put them on just before getting into the car, but also still maintain good hand washing practice. You should only leave for the lesson once you've made contact with the pupil and you are happy with their responses and that there isn't a risk that they may have been exposed to coronavirus. Before the lesson, you should also appraise the pupil of what's going to happen in the lesson and the protocols that you are having to have around training at this time, so they know what to expect. Brief them on the fact that there will be no handshakes or physical contact of any nature. Brief them on the fact that you're going to ask them and insist that they wash their hands or use hand sanitizer immediately before the lesson or wear disposable gloves. Tell them that you'll be keeping the windows open at all times to increase ventilation in the car, and therefore they should wear appropriate clothing. It is advisable that both you and the pupil wear long sleeve tops and long sleeve trousers at this time as well. You will tell them that your car will be hygienic and clean, that you will have sanitised it before they get in. It is our advice that you need to avoid using cash at this time, as it has been known that certain incidences may have caused coronavirus to be spread. Use other methods of payment, such as bank transfer, for example. Once you are happy to proceed with the lesson, you should check the pupil has washed their hands according to government guidance and explain that, for the obvious reasons, you will not shake their hand. You have just cleaned your hands with hand sanitizer or soap and water where possible. You've cleaned down all the controls of the vehicle and external contact points like the door handles with antibacterial wipe or soap and water where appropriate. The windows will also be down during the lesson to allow for ventilation, and let them know if they would like the heater on. Tell them to wrap up warm, as it might be a little chilly inside the car, but also, as we mentioned earlier, it is good advice at the moment to wear long sleeve tops and long sleeve trousers. Unaccompanied training. The pupil's parents, guardians or friends will not be able to sit in lessons at this time. Once you arrive at the pickup point, you should again assess whether the pupil is well enough to start the lesson. Don't let them get into the car straight away. From a distance of 2 metres at least, have a conversation with them to assess whether they seem themselves or have a cough that you did not notice on the phone call, or look like they may have a fever or high temperature. Ask them again whether they feel that they have been exposed to coronavirus in the past 24 hours or last few days, or whether they experienced any other symptoms. If you are not 100% happy with their state of health, you should not start the lesson, and you should explain the lesson will have to be postponed until they have recovered. This may be a difficult conversation, but you should explain that you do not want to put yourself at risk, nor them as a pupil, nor the population at large. Do this before every lesson that you have. Regardless of the current circumstances, you still need to make sure that you carry out the normal protocols that you would employ in your driver training sessions, especially with new pupils. So you still need to check the pupil's licence, which can be done electronically at gov.uk/check-driving-information. You will need the last 8 characters of their driving licence and the check code from the pupil. In the car, ask them to hold the licence up so you can check it. Do not touch the licence or take the licence from them. The code will be valid for 21 days and you can only use the code once. Personal protective equipment that you will need. Hand sanitizer. If you're not able to wash your hands with soap and water, you will need to carry hand sanitizer in the vehicle. If you do not have any hand sanitizer, then you should arrange to meet the pupil at a location with hand washing facilities. If it isn't possible to ensure that your hands are not clean and hygienically washed or sanitised at this time, you should rearrange the lesson. Good hand hygiene is one of the most important factors in limiting the spread of coronavirus. Clean your hands as frequently as you can. You will need antibacterial wipes and spray to clean down your car between and possibly during lessons. Think if you or the pupil accidentally coughed or sneezed, you would need to clean the car where it had been exposed. If you do not have these materials, then the lesson should be rearranged. Have a supply of disposable bin bags in the car and put all wipes and tissues in the bin bag, offering it to the pupil for them to put their disposable gloves or anything they've been using in it as well. Do not touch the items that they have used. Change the bin bag after each lesson and dispose of it responsibly. Other PPE you could consider. Disposable gloves. It is a good idea that you use protective disposable gloves for you and your pupils to wear during the lesson. You still have to have good hand hygiene and clean your hands thoroughly before you put the gloves on and after you've taken them off, and still clean down the controls. Gloves are not there to protect everything. We need to take these extra steps too. Please note that some people have a latex allergy, so check with your pupils beforehand. You will also need to change your gloves more often than you think, and at least after every single lesson. Face masks. It is our advice that if you can access a stock of disposable or face masks that can be changed frequently, you should use them. Whilst the advice on the effectiveness of face masks varies at the time, if it makes you feel more comfortable and to increase your protection, the options should be taken. Make sure you use a new one frequently and dispose of the old ones safely and responsibly. Wear clothing that is appropriate and covers as much of you as possible, including arms and legs. We advise you wash your clothing as soon as you have finished work for the day. Frontline staff in the NHS are taking their clothes off as soon as they reach their house, popping them in a bag that can go in the washing machine as well, and popping all items in a wash on their own straight away. It is essential that the PPE equipment that you do choose to wear, though, does not impede your or the pupil's vision or ability to control the vehicle. You may have noticed, for example, supermarket workers wearing visors to protect them whilst they work. It may not be appropriate in your role to be able to wear such items. After the lesson. After you finish the lesson, and if you conduct any further key worker training, you'll need to repeat the same processes you did at the start of the lesson. Again, remember not to shake the pupil's hand. Clean your hands with sanitizer or soap and water where possible. Do not enter the pupil's house to do this. Remind them to wash their hands as soon as they get back into the house. Agree a drop-off point or a place you can go straight after the lesson where you can safely wipe the car down ready for the next lesson or your journey home. Call your next pupil and assess their state to avoid a wasted journey. Repeat the process for each and every key worker pupil that you may train. This might seem like a lot of work, but it is designed to mitigate the risk of you either contracting COVID-19, spreading COVID-19, or passing it on to the public at large. During the lesson and content structure should remain the same as you would to use to train any driver. You should be treating these lessons as you do any of your pupils, especially if they are new. You should be assessing what they need, what their individual aims and objectives are, and the context that they're going to be driving after they've left your training. You'll need to consider the following. Any writing should be done by you, the ADI. Don't share a pen or device. If you do, clean it with anti-bac wipes straight afterwards. Training resources should be held up and not passed between the two of you. Try to avoid directly facing each other when discussing scenarios. If you're going to provide a demonstration drive, you'll need to wipe down the controls before and after. And if you're wearing gloves, then change the gloves just before and after the demo drive. Some of your usual terms and conditions might need to be altered in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, the late cancellation policy is probably most relevant. It could be that you need to cancel lessons at very little notice because of the following reasons. Your pupil becomes unwell and has symptoms in line with COVID-19. Someone in your pupil's household is showing symptoms. Your pupil believes they may have been in contact with someone showing symptoms. Or you become unwell and are showing symptoms. Someone in your household is showing symptoms. You believe you may have been in contact with someone showing symptoms. These are all reasons that you may need to cancel a lesson at very little notice, and contractually it should be in your T&Cs that you have the right to do so, and for these reasons. If you do become unwell, you will need to self-isolate in line with government guidance. It is responsible to contact anybody you've been in contact with them to advise them that you may have shown symptoms and for them to self-isolate too. More details on isolation advice is available at the NHS website in the link below. It's really important with a lot of your key workers at the moment to consider the type of driving they're going to be doing and that you should be training them for. A lot of the people that you're going to see in the context of key workers are wanting extra training because they will be driving for work. So you should assess what type of driving, the frequency, type of vehicles they're going to be driving, and assess the kind of risks that they may have to help you better train them to mitigate those risks. Key risks in commuter driving and driving for work could include: there is an increased risk to driving when tired. So have a 20-minute break before driving and have a caffeinated drink. It's general advice for those pupils that you feel may be more likely to expose to driving when fatigued. You should advise your pupils if they're going to be driving a lot for work, i.e. they're a delivery driver, they should be taking the allotted breaks to unwind a little and have a walk round if they can and freshen themselves up. Driving when feeling stressed is a massive distraction, and many of your key worker pupils are going to be under quite a lot of pressure at this time, so likely to be feeling stressed. Impress upon them the impact that stress can have on their driving and how to mitigate that big risk. So advise them to take a bit of time to clear their head and relax a little before driving if they're feeling stressed. Many of your pupils will be driving on sociable hours as well, such as after dark and in the early hours of the morning. This obviously carries an increased risk. So ensure that you've got some rest before you take on these types of journeys. Again, advise your pupils to take the same measures that they would if they felt fatigued. Have a caffeinated drink before they drive and have a good supply of fresh air in the car. They shouldn't push themselves to continue driving if they feel tired. They should be self-aware. Sometimes when feeling tired or under pressure and stressed, we can zone out when driving and maybe not remember the last 5 to 10 minutes of our driving, the journey or the route. You may have caught yourself staring yourself when you've been feeling tired or fatigued. This can be a sign of tiredness, so drivers should pull over when safe and legal to do so and have a break. Trainers and pupils should be aware that not only is their on-road risk increased when driving for work, their risk may also be increased at this time as they may be driving tired and under pressure. That's why it's important that you consider the occupational driving context and the needs of your individual pupil as you design your learning around them. Other considerations you may want to make. You are going to need more time after any key worker training or before than you would do normally with normal lessons to clean down the car and assess if any further key worker pupils are well enough for the lesson. You're going to have to take more time to do that cleaning process and also ring your next pupil to assess their state of health. If you are able to go home between lessons and wash your hands thoroughly for a minimum of 20 seconds with soap and water, perhaps plan that into your schedule as well. If you're using your training vehicle for just training, then that will mitigate the risk. Avoid having family members use your training vehicle if at all possible, or travel in it for at least 72 hours after the last lesson. If you have another vehicle you can use at this time for your personal essential tasks, it may be a good idea to just use that for that and your training vehicle for training only. Avoid touching your face with your hands at all times, not just in your training role, but in general life at the moment, particularly if you've been outside and in contact with other people and other materials. That's the end of the course. We hope you found it useful. We are now going to ask you to complete a short quiz based on this lesson. You will need to score 8 out of 10 to pass. To admit you to the register, we need to ensure that you've actually taken on the learning from this workshop and the key points of safe training protocols. Thank you for your time and your patience. Stay safe and stay well out there.